I stood in Marcus Rothwell's corner office, my hands trembling as he slammed his fist on the mahogany desk. "You're fired for disrespecting my son," he bellowed, his face crimson with rage. 20 minutes earlier, I had blocked his 24-year-old son Dylan from accessing classified defense systems that could compromise national security. Now, I was paying the ultimate price for doing my job. As I walked toward the elevator, clutching my security badge and personal belongings, I felt devastated, but absolutely certain I had made the right choice. I had no idea that federal agents were already mobilizing. 6 years ago, I started at Meridian Defense Technologies as a junior analyst fresh out of George Washington University with a master's degree in cybersecurity. My name is Keisha Thompson, and I worked my way up through sheer determination and countless late nights studying encryption protocols and threat analysis. The security clearance process took 18 months of background checks, interviews with neighbors, and financial scrutiny that left no stone unturned. Every sacrifice felt worth it when I finally earned access to systems protecting $800 million in government contracts. 3 months ago, I received the promotion I had dreamed about since starting here. Senior cybersecurity analyst meant responsibility for protecting our most sensitive projects, including satellite defense systems and advanced missile guidance technology. The compartmented access system meant even I couldn't view everything without specific authorization codes that changed weekly. Each project existed in its own digital fortress, accessible only to personnel with demonstrated need and appropriate clearance levels. 2 weeks before my termination, Dylan Rothwell arrived as the newly appointed Special Projects Coordinator. His resume listed a bachelor's degree in business administration from a private college in Connecticut and 6 months at a consulting firm that his father's company had hired. No cybersecurity experience, no technical certifications, no government clearance. Yet somehow he expected immediate access to our most classified systems. From his first day, Dylan displayed an attitude that set my teeth on edge. He strolled in around 10:30 each morning, coffee in hand, acting like he owned the building, which technically his family did. He interrupted meetings with suggestions that revealed his complete ignorance of basic security protocols. During briefings about threat assessments, he checked his phone constantly and made comments that showed he considered our work beneath his attention. The female staff noticed his behavior immediately. Sarah Chen in accounting mentioned his inappropriate comments about her appearance during budget meetings. Jennifer Walsh from personnel complained about his habit of standing too close during conversations and touching shoulders without invitation. Each incident alone seemed minor, but together they painted a picture of someone who believed rules didn't apply to him. Last week, I started noticing irregularities in our access logs. Someone had been attempting to breach various classified partitions using credentials that didn't match their authorization levels. The attempts were subtle, using valid employee login information, but targeting systems those employees had no business accessing. Initially, I assumed it was automated testing from our security team, but the patterns looked wrong. Tuesday afternoon, I discovered the truth. Dylan had been systematically approaching junior staff members using a combination of charm and family authority to gather access codes. Emma Rodriguez from data entry admitted he had convinced her to share her password by claiming he needed to verify her security compliance. Thomas Bradley from maintenance revealed Dylan had borrowed his access card for 20 minutes, claiming he needed to retrieve something from a restricted server room. The scope of his activities became clear when I cross-referenced the attempted breaches with his interactions throughout the building. Dylan wasn't randomly exploring systems out of curiosity. He was specifically targeting Project Blackhawk, our most sensitive contract, involving next-generation satellite defense technology. The project details were classified at levels requiring security clearances that took years to obtain and maintain. Yesterday morning, everything came to a head. I watched Dylan approach Jessica Martinez, our newest systems analyst, with his typical confident smile. He leaned against her cubicle wall and started his usual routine about needing temporary access for family business purposes. Jessica looked uncomfortable, but seemed ready to comply when I intervened. I walked directly to Dylan and informed him that sharing access credentials violated federal law and company policy. His expression shifted from surprise to anger as I explained that accessing classified systems without proper authorization constituted a serious security breach. When he demanded to know who I thought I was to question his authority, I reminded him that my job was protecting these systems regardless of family connections. The confrontation escalated when Dylan insisted his father had given him blanket authorization for all company systems. I requested written documentation of this authorization, which he couldn't provide. When I suggested he follow proper channels to request appropriate clearances, he accused me of obstructing family business and threatened to have me fired before lunch. I spent yesterday evening in my apartment reviewing every access log and security report from the past 2 weeks. The evidence was overwhelming. Dylan had made 47 unauthorized access attempts across 12 different classified partitions. He had manipulated 8 different employees into sharing credentials or access cards. Most disturbing, he had successfully penetrated preliminary layers of Project Blackhawk's security architecture. This wasn't youthful curiosity or ignorance about proper procedures. Dylan was conducting systematic reconnaissance of our most sensitive defense contracts. Every attempt showed increasing sophistication, suggesting he was learning from failed efforts and adapting his approach. The implications terrified me. These systems protected technologies that could affect national security if compromised. I documented everything meticulously, creating detailed reports with timestamps, access logs, and witness statements from affected employees. My evidence clearly showed a pattern of deliberate security violations that demanded immediate investigation. I prepared my presentation carefully, knowing I would face resistance given Dylan's family connections, but certain that protecting these systems outweighed any personal consequences. This morning, I requested an emergency meeting with Marcus Rothwell to present my findings. I expected him to be concerned about potential security breaches and grateful for my diligence in protecting company assets. Instead, I walked into a trap that would destroy everything I had worked years to build. The drive home to my Arlington apartment felt surreal after 6 years of considering Meridian my second home. I pulled into the parking garage with my cardboard box of personal belongings, my company laptop and security badge confiscated. My professional life effectively ended with one conversation. The first person I wanted to talk to was Jake Henderson, my boyfriend of 18 months who worked in Meridian's Human Resources Department. Jake and I had met at a company holiday party where his easy smile and genuine interest in my work had immediately attracted me. He listened when I talked about cybersecurity challenges, asked thoughtful questions about my projects within the limits of what I could discuss, and never seemed intimidated by my technical expertise like some men I had dated. Our relationship felt like a partnership where we supported each other's careers while building something meaningful together. I called Jake from my car expecting sympathy and support during the worst professional crisis of my life. Instead, his response chilled me to the bone. His voice sounded distant and formal as he suggested I might have overreacted to Dylan's behavior. When I described the security violations I had documented, Jake interrupted to ask whether I had considered that challenging the CEO's son might be career suicide. The conversation took a darker turn when Jake began lecturing me about company politics and the importance of respecting hierarchy. His words felt rehearsed, like he was reading from a script rather than speaking as my concerned boyfriend. When I expressed hurt that he wasn't supporting me during this crisis, he responded coldly that I should have consulted him before making such a serious accusation against family. Something in his tone triggered my analytical instincts. I started asking specific questions about what I had told him regarding my investigation. Jake's responses revealed details I had never shared with him. He knew about specific access attempts I had discovered only yesterday. He referenced conversations with employees I had interviewed privately. Most damning, he mentioned Project Blackhawk by name despite my careful adherence to compartmented information protocols. The horrifying realization crept over me like ice water. Jake had been monitoring my activities and reporting to Dylan for months. Our entire relationship had been orchestrated as an intelligence-gathering operation. Every intimate conversation about my work, every discussion of my concerns about security protocols, every detail about my daily responsibilities had been transmitted to the very person threatening our national defense systems. I confronted Jake directly, demanding to know how he knew information I had never shared. His facade crumbled as he admitted that Dylan had approached him 6 months into our relationship with an offer he couldn't refuse: promotion to senior HR analyst. salary increase of $30,000, performance bonuses tied to monitoring problematic employees who might obstruct family business operations. The betrayal cut deeper than any professional setback could. Jake explained his surveillance with the casual tone of someone discussing weather patterns. He had photographed my work documents during visits to my apartment. He had installed monitoring software on my personal laptop during a weekend when I was visiting my sister. He had recorded our private conversations about work challenges and transmitted the audio files to Dylan's personal email account. Jake's justification was purely pragmatic. The Rothwell family owned significant influence throughout the defense contracting industry in the Washington metropolitan area. Challenging their authority was professional suicide, and anyone who chose that path deserved whatever consequences followed. He portrayed himself as the reasonable party, suggesting I was naive to think principles mattered more than practical career management. I discovered that Jake had been providing Dylan with detailed intelligence about my investigation from its earliest stages. Every employee I interviewed had been warned about my questions before I approached them. Every piece of evidence I gathered had been analyzed by Dylan and his father before I completed my documentation. My entire investigation had been conducted under enemy surveillance, turning my diligence into a roadmap for covering their tracks. The personal violations were staggering. Jake had monitored my email accounts, tracked my location through shared phone applications, and reported my social activities to ensure I wasn't discussing work concerns with friends or family members. He knew about my financial situation, my career aspirations, and my personal insecurities because I had trusted him with intimate details of my life. I threw Jake out of my apartment that evening, changing my locks immediately and beginning the process of securing my personal information from further compromise. But the damage was already done. My investigation had been turned against me. My personal life had been weaponized against my professional integrity, and my isolation was now complete. The scope of my vulnerability became clear over the following days. My mentor, Dr. Patricia Walsh, had retired from government service last month and moved to Florida to care for her aging mother. My closest colleagues at Meridian were junior employees who couldn't risk challenging executive authority without established careers to protect them. My professional network consisted primarily of government contractors who maintained relationships with the Rothwell family across multiple companies. I had always prided myself on building career success through merit rather than personal connections. Now that principled approach left me completely defenseless against systematic character assassination. My security clearance investigation could be sabotaged through anonymous complaints about my judgment and reliability. My professional references would be poisoned by whisper campaigns questioning my mental stability and ethical standards. That night, I sat in my living room surrounded by the wreckage of my personal and professional life. Everything I had worked years to build was being destroyed by people who considered my principles an inconvenience to their criminal activities. I began seriously considering leaving cybersecurity entirely, perhaps returning to school for a different career path that wouldn't require security clearances or defense industry connections. The irony was devastating. I had prevented a serious national security breach and documented evidence of systematic espionage activities, but my reward was professional exile and personal betrayal. The system I had sworn to protect was being manipulated by the very people I had tried to warn, and my integrity had become a liability rather than an asset. As I prepared for bed that Friday night, I couldn't imagine how my situation could possibly improve. The Rothwell family controlled too much influence, commanded too many resources, and maintained too many connections for someone like me to challenge effectively. I felt completely powerless against forces that seemed determined to destroy anyone who dared to question their authority. I had no idea that federal agencies had been monitoring the situation independently, or that my documentation had already reached people with the power to investigate and prosecute the crimes I had uncovered. My darkest hour was about to become the beginning of my ultimate vindication. Monday morning arrived with a cascade of disasters that made Friday's termination seem like merely the opening move in a comprehensive campaign of personal destruction. I woke up to discover that my security clearance had been suspended pending investigation into inappropriate access to classified materials and potential security violations. The notification email cited anonymous complaints about my behavior and judgment, clearly orchestrated by people who understood exactly how to manipulate the system. Within hours, my professional references started receiving phone calls from unidentified sources questioning my mental stability and suggesting I posed a security risk. Dr. Sarah Williams from Georgetown University, who had written my graduate school recommendation, called to warn me about disturbing inquiries regarding my emotional fitness for security work. Professor Michael Chen from my cybersecurity certification program received similar calls questioning whether I had displayed concerning behavior patterns during training. The financial warfare began before noon. My bank accounts were frozen due to suspicious activity reports that claimed I had received unexplained payments from foreign sources. The evidence was clearly fabricated, but the investigation process would take weeks to resolve, while my ability to pay rent and basic expenses disappeared immediately. My credit cards were suspended pending verification of my employment status, leaving me functionally unable to access my own money. I spent the afternoon making phone calls to defense contractors where I had submitted applications for positions. One by one, my prospects evaporated as hiring managers explained that circumstances had changed regarding their staffing needs. Some were honest enough to admit they had received warnings about my problematic history with previous employers. Others simply withdrew their offers without explanation, clearly unwilling to risk associating with someone who had challenged the Rothwell family. The systematic nature of the campaign became clear when I researched Marcus Rothwell's professional connections. He served on the boards of directors for 7 major defense contractors in the Washington metropolitan area. His company maintained partnerships with dozens of smaller firms that depended on Meridian's contracts for financial stability. His personal relationships extended throughout the industry, built over 30 years of cultivating influence and exchanging favors with other executives. Tuesday brought attacks on my professional credentials and certifications. Anonymous complaints were filed with the Information Systems Security Association, questioning my ethical standards and requesting investigation into my certification eligibility. Similar complaints reached the International Association of Computer Science and Information Technology, citing concerning behavior patterns and potential security risks that demanded immediate review. The character assassination campaign targeted every aspect of my professional reputation. Former colleagues received calls suggesting I had exhibited troubling emotional instability and inappropriate responses to authority during my tenure at Meridian. The callers claimed to be conducting background investigations for potential employers, but their questions clearly aimed to destroy rather than verify my qualifications. Wednesday morning brought the masterstroke that demonstrated the true scope of their campaign. I received notice that Dylan Rothwell had filed a sexual harassment complaint against me, claiming I had made unwanted advances toward him and threatened retaliation when he rejected my approaches. The complaint included detailed allegations about inappropriate behavior during meetings and suggestions that my hostility toward him stemmed from personal rather than professional motivations. Jake's betrayal became fully apparent when I discovered he had provided corroborating testimony supporting Dylan's fabricated claims. Every private conversation we had shared about workplace dynamics had been twisted into evidence of my obsessive behavior toward authority figures. My legitimate concerns about security violations were reframed as retaliatory actions following romantic rejection. The intimate details Jake knew about my personality and insecurities were weaponized to create a plausible narrative of unprofessional conduct. The complaint also included supporting statements from other Meridian employees who described my aggressive questioning and intrusive monitoring of their activities. These were the same employees I had interviewed about Dylan's security violations, but their statements now portrayed me as the problem rather than the solution. The investigation process would destroy my reputation, regardless of the ultimate findings, because accusations of sexual harassment follow professionals throughout their careers. By Thursday afternoon, the campaign had expanded beyond professional destruction into personal harassment. My apartment management company received multiple noise complaints from neighbors I had never met, claiming I was disturbing the peace during hours when I wasn't even home. Anonymous reports to local authorities suggested I was exhibiting concerning behavior patterns that warranted wellness checks and potential mental health interventions. The coordinated timing of these attacks revealed sophisticated planning that extended far beyond simple retaliation for workplace disagreements. Marcus Rothwell was demonstrating his ability to destroy anyone who challenged his family's authority, sending a message throughout the industry that crossing the Rothwell family carried consequences that extended far beyond employment termination. I realized this campaign wasn't designed merely to punish me for blocking Dylan's access to classified systems. It was calculated to ensure I could never work in cybersecurity again, destroying my ability to pose future threats to their operations while serving as an example to other potential whistleblowers. The message was unmistakably clear: challenge this family and lose everything you have worked to build. Friday morning, I sat in my car outside Meridian's headquarters, watching Dylan arrive for work in his new Porsche Cayenne, laughing with colleagues who had once respected my expertise and professionalism. He looked completely relaxed and confident, clearly enjoying his victory over someone who had dared to question his authority. Several employees who passed my car avoided eye contact, unwilling to associate with someone who had been marked for destruction by their employer's family. The psychological impact was devastating. I had spent 6 years building a career based on merit, integrity, and dedication to protecting national security. Now I faced bankruptcy, within 3 months professional exile from the only field I had ever wanted to work in, and personal isolation from people who were too frightened of consequences to offer support. The system I had tried to protect was being manipulated against me by the very criminals I had attempted to expose. That afternoon, I received an unexpected phone call that would transform my nightmare into the beginning of justice. But at that moment, sitting in my car watching Dylan celebrate his triumph, I felt completely powerless against forces that seemed unstoppable. I had no idea that federal agencies had been monitoring the situation independently, or that my courage in documenting their crimes was about to be rewarded in ways I couldn't possibly imagine. The Rothwell family's systematic destruction of my life was about to become evidence in a federal investigation that would destroy their criminal enterprise and vindicate every principle I had refused to abandon. My darkest moment was actually the calm before their storm. Tuesday afternoon brought a phone call that changed everything. The voice on the other end identified herself as Amanda Rodriguez, administrative assistant to NSA Director Rebecca Morrison. She requested my immediate presence at a downtown Washington location for a meeting regarding matters related to your recent employment. I assumed this concerned my security clearance suspension and expected another humiliation in what had become a systematic campaign of professional destruction. Instead, I found myself in a conference room at a federal building where Director Morrison waited with 3 other officials whose credentials immediately commanded my attention. Morrison herself was a legend in cybersecurity circles, having built her reputation exposing foreign intelligence operations against American defense contractors. The others introduced themselves as Deputy Director Thomas Chen from the FBI's Counterintelligence Division, NSA Deputy Director Patricia Williams, and Special Agent Jennifer Martinez from the FBI's Cybercrime Unit. Director Morrison opened our meeting with words that transformed my understanding of the entire situation. Ms. Thompson, your documentation of security violations at Meridian Defense Technologies has provided crucial evidence for a federal investigation that has been ongoing for 8 months. Your actions potentially prevented a catastrophic breach of classified defense systems. She explained that Dylan Rothwell's attempted access to Project Blackhawk had triggered automated counterintelligence monitoring systems designed to detect unauthorized access to compartmented information. My meticulous security logs had been forwarded automatically to federal analysts who immediately recognized patterns consistent with systematic espionage activities. Every violation I had documented became evidence in a growing case against the Rothwell family. The revelation that stunned me was the scope of their criminal enterprise. Dylan wasn't simply an entitled young man abusing family privilege to satisfy curiosity about classified systems. Federal surveillance had identified him as the central figure in a sophisticated intelligence operation that had been selling American defense secrets to foreign contacts for over 2 years. The attempted access to Project Blackhawk represented the culmination of a systematic effort to compromise our most sensitive satellite defense technologies. Even more shocking was the discovery that Marcus Rothwell wasn't merely protecting his son's activities, but actively facilitating the espionage operation. Financial investigations had uncovered millions of dollars in payments from shell companies linked to hostile foreign governments. Bank records showed complex money laundering schemes designed to disguise the source and destination of funds received in exchange for classified information. Father and son had been systematically betraying American national security for enormous financial gain. Director Morrison presented evidence that made my blood run cold. Intercepted communications showed Dillon discussing specific details about satellite defense capabilities with contacts identified as foreign intelligence operatives. Financial records documented payments received within days of successful penetrations of classified systems. Most damning surveillance had recorded conversations between Marcus and Dillon explicitly discussing the value of different defense contracts to their foreign clients. The federal investigation had reached a critical juncture where additional evidence was needed to ensure successful prosecution. Director Morrison offered me an opportunity that was both terrifying and exhilarating: return to Meridian as an undercover operative gathering final evidence needed to bring down the entire criminal network. The operation would require wearing sophisticated surveillance equipment and participating in scenarios designed to document their crimes definitively. The offer came with guarantees that transformed my situation completely. My security clearance would be restored immediately with upgrades reflecting my service to national security. The fabricated charges against me would be exposed as part of the criminal conspiracy, vindicating my professional reputation while demonstrating the lengths the Rothwell family would go to protect their operation. Most importantly, I would have federal protection against further retaliation and witness immunity for any testimony required during prosecution. Deputy Director Chen explained the technical aspects of the operation. I would carry recording devices sophisticated enough to capture conversations while remaining undetectable during standard security sweeps. Federal agents would monitor my safety constantly through multiple surveillance methods. Emergency protocols were established for any situation where my cover might be compromised or my safety threatened. Special Agent Martinez outlined the legal framework protecting me during the operation. Federal witness protection laws would shield me from retaliation while ensuring my cooperation remained voluntary throughout the process. The evidence we gathered would be used exclusively for prosecuting the Rothwell family and their co-conspirators, not for any purpose that might compromise my own interests or career prospects. Director Morrison asked for my decision, immediately explaining that the operation needed to begin within 24 hours to be effective. The Rothwell family's systematic destruction of my reputation created perfect cover for my return to Meridian as a defeated employee begging for another chance. Marcus Rothwell's arrogance would prevent him from suspecting that his victim might become the instrument of his downfall. I accepted without hesitation. The opportunity to transform my nightmare into justice for American national security was everything I could have hoped for during my darkest hours. More than personal vindication, this operation would protect other potential whistleblowers from the systematic destruction I had experienced while ensuring that genuine threats to our defense systems faced appropriate consequences. The meeting concluded with detailed preparations for my return to Meridian the following morning. Federal technicians would equip me with surveillance devices and communication systems that evening. Legal documentation would be prepared to protect me throughout the operation and guarantee my immunity from any charges related to the espionage investigation. Most importantly, I would finally have allies with the power and authority to ensure justice prevailed over corruption. As I left that federal building, I felt something I hadn't experienced in weeks. Hope. The systematic campaign of personal and professional destruction that had seemed unstoppable was actually creating the perfect opportunity to expose the criminals responsible. My courage in documenting their initial crimes was about to become the foundation for their complete downfall. The Rothwell family had made a critical error in assuming that destroying my life would eliminate the threat I represented. Instead, they had simply motivated federal agencies to recruit me as their most valuable asset in bringing down a criminal enterprise that threatened American national security. My role was about to shift from victim to victor in ways they couldn't possibly anticipate. Wednesday morning, I walked back into Meridian Defense Technologies carrying sophisticated federal surveillance equipment and a cover story designed to appeal to Marcus Rothwell's arrogance. I had spent the previous evening with FBI technicians who equipped me with recording devices so advanced they were virtually undetectable even during thorough security sweeps. Every conversation would be captured in digital quality that could be presented as evidence in federal court. The hardest part was appearing defeated and desperate when I felt more empowered than at any point in my career. I knocked on Marcus Rothwell's office door and requested a private meeting to apologize for my inappropriate behavior and beg for another chance to prove my loyalty to the company. His satisfaction was obvious as he listened to my carefully rehearsed script about recognizing my mistakes and wanting to make amends. Marcus agreed to rehire me on probationary status with reduced responsibilities and constant supervision. He assigned me to basic system monitoring duties that would keep me away from sensitive projects while allowing Dylan to continue his activities without interference. My new workstation was positioned where multiple people could observe my activities, creating the illusion of security while actually providing perfect cover for my surveillance mission. Dylan's behavior during my first day back confirmed everything Director Morrison had told me about the sophistication of their operation. He made several comments that revealed detailed knowledge of classified project timelines and technical specifications he couldn't possibly have obtained through legitimate channels. His casual references to foreign consulting opportunities and international business development clearly referred to his espionage activities. The surveillance equipment performed flawlessly, capturing conversations and activities throughout the facility while remaining completely undetectable. Federal agents monitoring my safety confirmed that every interaction was being recorded with quality sufficient for prosecution. More importantly, Dylan's confidence in his father's protection led him to make increasingly incriminating statements about their criminal activities. Thursday afternoon brought an unexpected development that initially terrified me, but ultimately provided the most valuable evidence yet. Jake Henderson approached me privately during my lunch break requesting a conversation about clearing the air between us. I expected another attempt to manipulate or intimidate me, but instead encountered something completely different that changed my understanding of the entire situation. Jake revealed that his real name was Jacob Henderson, and his actual position was FBI Special Agent assigned to investigate Meridian Defense Technologies. His relationship with me had indeed been part of an undercover operation, but not the one I had assumed. The FBI had been investigating the Rothwell family for 8 months, and Jake's mission was infiltrating their organization while protecting me from harm during my unknowing involvement in gathering evidence. The revelation that Jake was actually an FBI agent working to expose rather than assist the Rothwell family transformed my understanding of everything that had happened. His apparent betrayal during my termination was carefully orchestrated misdirection, designed to maintain his cover while allowing federal agencies to monitor the family's response to my investigation. Every piece of information he had provided to Dylan was FBI-approved misinformation designed to expose the scope of their espionage network. Jake explained his impossible position during the systematic campaign of personal destruction orchestrated against me. Maintaining his cover required appearing to support the Rothwell family's activities while actually documenting their crimes for federal prosecution. He had been forced to watch the woman he had genuinely fallen for suffer systematic destruction while being unable to reveal his true identity or provide the support I desperately needed. The most shocking revelation was that Jake's surveillance of my activities had been designed to protect rather than compromise me. The monitoring software on my personal computer was FBI equipment designed to prevent the Rothwell family from accessing my private information. His documentation of our conversations provided evidence that I was acting independently rather than as part of any conspiracy. His reports to Dylan contained carefully crafted misinformation that led the family to underestimate the threat I represented, while overestimating their ability to control the situation. Jake presented evidence that his undercover operation had already resulted in the arrest of several foreign contacts who had been purchasing classified information from Dylan. Bank records documenting money laundering activities had been obtained through surveillance authorized by federal warrants. Communication intercepts had identified additional CO conspirators throughout the defense contracting industry who would face prosecution alongside the Rothwell family. The personal aspects of our relationship had been complicated by the genuine feelings that developed despite the professional circumstances of our meeting. Jake admitted that his assignment had become emotionally compromised when he realized his feelings for me were authentic, rather than merely part of maintaining his cover. FBI protocols required him to request reassignment, but his supervisors determined that his access to the Rothwell family was too valuable to sacrifice. Jake's evidence had already contributed to federal warrants authorizing surveillance of Marcus Rothwell's personal and business communications. Every conversation between father and son regarding their criminal activities had been recorded and analyzed by federal prosecutors, building cases that would result in lengthy prison sentences. The systematic destruction of my reputation had been documented as additional evidence of obstruction of justice and witness intimidation. The operation was approaching its final phase, where the evidence we were gathering would provide the conclusive proof needed to arrest the entire criminal network. Jake explained that federal agents were positioned throughout the facility, ready to intervene if our safety was compromised or if the Rothwell family attempted to destroy evidence. Our surveillance was coordinating with multiple federal agencies to ensure comprehensive documentation of their criminal enterprise. As Thursday afternoon ended, I realized that my situation had transformed completely. Instead of being an isolated victim facing systematic destruction, I was now part of a sophisticated federal operation that would deliver justice while protecting my safety and career prospects. The courage I had shown in initially documenting their crimes was about to be rewarded with their complete downfall and my ultimate vindication. The Rothwell family's confidence in their ability to manipulate the system was creating the perfect opportunity for their exposure and prosecution. Their systematic efforts to destroy my life were actually providing additional evidence that would ensure their lengthy imprisonment. My role had evolved from victim to federal asset, and their days of freedom were numbered. Thursday evening brought the climactic confrontation that would determine whether justice prevailed or corruption continued unchallenged. Dylan Rothwell had grown increasingly suspicious of the heightened federal attention surrounding Meridian's operations, and his paranoia was driving him toward a desperate attempt to eliminate what he perceived as the source of his problems: me. Dylan's plan was elegantly simple and devastatingly effective. He planted classified documents from Project Blackhawk in my workstation during the night shift when security monitoring was minimal. The documents contained technical specifications that would constitute irrefutable evidence of espionage if discovered in my possession. He then submitted an anonymous tip to facility security, claiming he had witnessed me accessing unauthorized materials and removing classified information from secure areas. Friday morning arrived with Marcus Rothwell personally leading a security sweep of my workspace, accompanied by federal investigators from the Defense Department's Office of Inspector General. They expected to find a defeated former employee caught red-handed with stolen classified materials, providing perfect justification for my arrest and prosecution while deflecting attention from their own criminal activities. Instead, they discovered me calmly seated at my desk, with Director Morris and Agent Henderson, and a team of federal prosecutors armed with overwhelming evidence of the Rothwell family's systematic espionage activities. The planted documents remained exactly where Dylan had placed them, but sophisticated surveillance equipment had recorded his every movement during the placement operation. His attempt to frame me had been captured in detail sufficient for additional felony charges. Director Morrison began the confrontation by presenting Marcus Rothwell with federal warrants authorizing the arrest of both father and son on charges including espionage, money laundering, conspiracy against the United States, obstruction of justice, and witness intimidation. Every crime they had committed during their campaign against me had been documented through surveillance authorized by federal courts. The evidence against Dylan was overwhelming. Surveillance recordings captured him explicitly discussing classified defense capabilities with contacts identified through NSA monitoring as foreign intelligence operatives. Bank records documented millions of dollars received in exchange for classified information over the past 2 years. Most damning, his attempt to frame me for his own crimes had been recorded in real time by federal agents monitoring facility security systems. Marcus Rothwell faced equally devastating evidence of his role in facilitating and profiting from his son's espionage activities. Financial investigations had uncovered complex money laundering operations designed to disguise payments received from hostile foreign governments. Communication intercepts revealed his active participation in discussions about the value of specific defense contracts to their criminal enterprise. His systematic campaign to destroy my reputation constituted additional federal charges of witness intimidation and obstruction of justice. The scope of the criminal network extended far beyond the immediate Rothwell family. Federal investigators had identified multiple co-conspirators throughout the defense contracting industry who had facilitated their access to classified systems or helped launder the proceeds of their espionage activities. Several board members at Meridian and other companies faced arrest for their participation in the conspiracy. Dylan's psychological breakdown was immediate and spectacular. Confronted with recordings of his conversations with foreign agents and evidence of his systematic betrayal of American national security, he began screaming accusations at everyone present while demanding that his family connections would protect him from prosecution. His entitled rage at facing consequences for his criminal activities provided additional evidence of his complete lack of remorse or recognition of the gravity of his crimes. Marcus Rothwell attempted to maintain dignity through denial until presented with financial records documenting his receipt of millions of dollars from foreign sources in exchange for classified information. When confronted with recordings of his explicit discussions about selling American defense secrets, his composure crumbled as he realized the scope of evidence against him made conviction inevitable. The arrests were conducted with precision that demonstrated months of federal preparation. Both father and son were taken into custody on charges that would result in lengthy federal prison sentences. Their assets were frozen, pending forfeiture proceedings designed to recover the millions of dollars they had received through their espionage activities. The criminal enterprise they had built over years of systematic betrayal was dismantled completely within hours. The broader implications extended throughout the defense contracting industry. Meridian's government contracts were suspended immediately pending comprehensive security reviews. Other companies with connections to the Rothwell criminal network faced investigations that would likely result in additional prosecutions. The message was clear that corruption and espionage would face swift and decisive federal response, regardless of the political or financial influence of those involved. As federal agents led the Rothwell family away in handcuffs, I watched from the conference room where my nightmare had begun weeks earlier. The same office where Marcus Rothwell had fired me for protecting national security was now the scene of his arrest for systematic espionage activities. The justice was poetic, but more importantly, it was complete and final. Agent Henderson confirmed that the evidence we had gathered would ensure lengthy prison sentences for all participants in the criminal conspiracy. Federal prosecutors were confident that the charges would result in convictions that would deter similar activities throughout the defense industry. My courage in initially documenting their crimes had ultimately led to the complete dismantling of a criminal enterprise that threatened American national security. The systematic campaign they had waged to destroy my life had become evidence that would ensure their own destruction. Their confidence in their ability to manipulate the system had blinded them to the federal investigation that was documenting their every crime. My role had evolved from victim to the instrument of their downfall, and justice had prevailed, despite their apparent advantages in wealth and influence. 6 months after watching the Rothwell family led away in federal custody, I sit in the same conference room where my nightmare began, but now as Deputy Director of Cybersecurity for the restructured Meridian Defense Technologies. The company operates under comprehensive federal oversight designed to prevent future security breaches while maintaining its capacity to contribute to American defense capabilities. My security clearance has been upgraded to reflect my demonstrated commitment to protecting national security, and my experience has become a case study in federal training programs for identifying and reporting espionage activities. The legal proceedings concluded with outcomes that exceeded even the most optimistic predictions from federal prosecutors. Dylan Rothwell pleaded guilty to espionage charges in exchange for cooperation with ongoing investigations into foreign intelligence operations targeting American defense contractors. His testimony led to additional arrests and the disruption of espionage networks that had been operating for years. He received a sentence of 25 years in federal prison without possibility of parole for at least 15 years. Marcus Rothwell chose to fight the charges at trial, apparently believing his wealth and connections would influence the outcome. Instead, the jury convicted him on all counts after deliberating for less than 4 hours. The evidence presented during the 3-week trial documented systematic espionage activities that had netted millions of dollars while compromising critical American defense capabilities. His sentence of life imprisonment without parole ensures he will never again threaten national security or victimize employees who demonstrate integrity in protecting classified systems. The financial consequences were equally comprehensive. Federal forfeiture proceedings seized assets worth $47 million, including luxury homes, vehicles, artwork, and offshore accounts that represented the proceeds of their espionage activities. The seized funds were used to compensate employees whose careers had been damaged by the Rothwell family's criminal activities and to strengthen security systems throughout the defense contracting industry. Several board members and executives from other companies faced prosecution for their participation in the criminal conspiracy. The message resonated throughout the industry that facilitating espionage activities would result in federal charges, regardless of the professional or social status of those involved. The comprehensive nature of the investigation demonstrated federal capability to identify and prosecute complex criminal networks that threaten national security. My relationship with Jake, whose real name is indeed Jacob Henderson, required extensive counseling and rebuilding after the conclusion of his undercover assignment. The FBI provided resources for couples affected by undercover operations, helping us navigate the complex emotions involved in relationships that begin under false pretenses but develop genuine foundations. His complete transparency about his work and our shared commitment to national security created a stronger partnership than either of us had expected possible. We married last month in a ceremony attended by colleagues from both the FBI and the restructured Meridian Technologies. Director Morrison served as my maid of honor, symbolizing the transformation from adversary to mentor that had characterized my entire experience. Jake's FBI colleagues provided security for the event, ensuring our privacy while celebrating our union built on shared values and mutual respect. Dr. Patricia Walsh returned from retirement to serve as a consultant for Meridian's restructured security protocols, bringing decades of experience in preventing and detecting espionage activities. Her mentorship has been invaluable as I adapt to leadership responsibilities while maintaining the technical expertise that made me effective at identifying security threats. Together, we have developed training programs that help employees recognize and report suspicious activities without fear of retaliation. The colleagues who distanced themselves during my persecution have approached me seeking forgiveness and professional guidance. I have chosen to focus on building positive working relationships rather than harboring resentment, understanding that their fear was reasonable given the apparent power of the Rothwell family at that time. Their recognition of their mistakes and willingness to learn from the experience has contributed to a workplace culture that prioritizes ethical behavior over personal convenience. My experience has led to speaking opportunities at cybersecurity conferences throughout the country where I share lessons learned about identifying espionage activities and protecting national security interests. The Federal Bureau of Investigation and National Security Agency regularly request my participation in training programs for new agents and analysts. My story serves as inspiration for others facing pressure to compromise their principles in favor of personal advancement or job security. The whistleblower settlement I received from the federal government enabled me to establish the Patricia Walsh Scholarship Fund for women pursuing careers in cybersecurity and national security. The program provides financial assistance and mentorship for students who demonstrate both technical aptitude and ethical commitment to protecting American interests. Each year, 20 students receive support that helps them complete their education and enter careers dedicated to national service. The broader impact of exposing the Rothwell criminal enterprise extended far beyond individual justice. Congressional hearings examined security vulnerabilities throughout the defense contracting industry, leading to enhanced oversight procedures and stronger penalties for security violations. The case became a model for cooperation between private industry and federal agencies in identifying and prosecuting espionage activities that threaten national security. Today, I addressed a group of new employees beginning their careers at Meridian Technologies, sharing the story of how standing for principles in the face of overwhelming opposition ultimately led to justice and positive change. I emphasized that protecting national security requires individual courage to report violations regardless of the personal consequences, because the alternative is allowing criminals to compromise the systems that keep America safe. The lesson I learned through this experience is that integrity and courage in the face of overwhelming power ultimately triumph when you stand firm in your principles. The systematic destruction of my career and reputation seemed unstoppable at the time, but it actually created the perfect opportunity for federal agencies to recruit me as their most valuable asset in bringing down a criminal enterprise. My willingness to document and report security violations despite personal consequences led to my ultimate vindication and the protection of classified systems that affect American national security. Standing alone against corruption felt impossible during my darkest hours. But I discovered that principled action attracts allies with the power to ensure justice prevails. The courage to do what is right, even when facing systematic retaliation, creates positive change that extends far beyond individual circumstances. My nightmare became my greatest triumph, proving that integrity is never weakness, and that justice, though sometimes delayed, ultimately rewards those who refuse to compromise their principles. What would you do if you discovered criminal activities at your workplace, but knew that reporting them would destroy your career and personal relationships? Have you ever faced a situation where doing the right thing required enormous personal sacrifice? I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If this story inspired you to think about the importance of integrity in protecting our national security, please like this video and subscribe for more stories about courage in the face of adversity. Share this with someone who might need encouragement to stand up for what is right, even when the costs seem overwhelming. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember that your principles are worth defending regardless of the personal price. May you always find the courage to do what is right, and may justice reward your integrity as it rewarded mine.